workshop on managing attachment in our personal relationships. Uh, you will recall last time we were beginning to explore some of the methods that we could use to help us manage our egos, which in effect enables us to manage our relationships, our tendency to become attached in our relationships. And today, what we're going to continue to do is to look at some additional methods. We talked a little bit, if you recall, about the discipline of love, what I call bhakti yoga, and how we could pursue a discipline of demonstrating our love within relationships unconditionally and independent of the other person's pleasing us. Remember, we noticed that whenever the other person that we are in relationship with failed to please us, we tend to recoil, to contract, to withdraw our flow of love to that person. And as a result of that, of course, that person is deprived of the nutrient that our love is, and of course, we are deprived. It seems to be the law of the universe that you are yourself penalized for not loving, inasmuch as the person suffers for whom your love is needed. You see my point? So it's like a double penalty involved here. And we know that the real goal and objective of any authentic spiritual system of cultivation is to develop the conscious ability to at all times demonstrate and allow this love of ours to flow irrespective of the other person's behavior and our expectations of that other person. It's a tremendous challenge, of course, you see. But nevertheless, this is the best method, at least one of the best methods for dealing with that. We talked a little bit about karma yoga. The idea was that if we could somehow cut off the tentacles of our selfishness that is associated with our actions, then we would at the same time be effectively eliminating our egotism, which gets in the way of our relationship with other people. So we'll backtrack a little bit over those, or the next sessions will clarify everything. But what I wanted to do today was to get a little bit of these other methods up on the board at least, and then we can proceed from there and begin to tear them apart. So let us start with the third method for managing our attachments in relationships. And please bear in mind, when we're talking about managing our relationships, our attachment and relationship, we're really talking about managing our egos. Because all of the problems that we have in relating with another human being is going to be in the areas of our ego. In fact, in true spiritual science, the only barrier in making any kind of spiritual, emotional, or psychological progress is our own individual egos, you see. And one of the things that you know that we have tried to address from the outset of not only these workshops, but all of the other workshops that we've done, is to become very, very aware of the distinction between our ego and our self. And we have to remember that ego and self, what we call it a self, are entirely two different phenomena. You see, our ego is a social phenomenon, isn't it? Our ego is a byproduct of environment, influence, commentaries by other people on who we are, etc., etc. Whereas the self remains transcendental to that. So very often we talk about transcending the ego, meaning transcending our own sense of identity, that and a sense of identity that is based on our ego material, our ego mythology. Because as you all have seen from the past, very often all we do is create this mythology about ourselves and begin to cling to holding on to that throughout a course of time, and that always proves to be fatal. So bear in mind then that it is this thing here that we aim to bring under our control. you see, and to be able to finally reach back to union with our real self. And after all, this is the whole goal of yoga. Yoga simply means to yoke back, to rejoin. It carries the same basic meaning as religion, religare, to reunite. Okay? So we're going to be looking at technique number 3. This has been called Jnana Yoga. Jnana or Gyan. And loosely translated, it is the yoga of knowledge. Because the problem is this, is that ego really exists in us to the extent that we are ignorant of ourselves. To the extent that we don't know who we are, to that same extent we will be victims of our own egos. Because some sense of identity is absolutely necessary to function. Even if that sense of identity is based on false premises, it still is psychologically necessary. What we do in that case then, we begin to act according to the dictates of a false image of ourselves, which is ego, and then this falsity, this inaccuracy permeates our whole life, which amounts to picking the wrong husband, picking the wrong wife, picking the wrong job, picking the wrong neighborhood to live in, picking the wrong clothes. Everything you do will be wrong in the sense that it won't feel right. There'll be no sense of fulfillment from your actions, simply because you're acting on a premise that is not in any way connected with your reality whatsoever. Okay? So Jnana Yoga then is the conscious and deliberate effort to transcend this ignorance. Okay? And so we will talk a little bit to begin with about this jhana or this Gyan Yoga. Yoga of knowledge. Now, what do we mean by knowledge? What do we come to understand by knowledge? What is the nature of real knowledge? You have to understand that there's a distinction between information and knowledge, right? Information has no transformative effect on us at all. It's just information, right? And therefore, a person can gather a lot of information, and then we tend to refer to that person as knowledgeable. They have a lot of information. But that is not the definition of knowledge that these mystics have. When they talk about the practice of the yoga of knowledge, the practice of the discipline of knowing thyself, the acquisition of real knowledge, they're talking about something quite different. They're talking about knowledge of the self, I think. Only that counts as real knowledge if it is knowledge of your real self. How then to use this intellect in order to acquire knowledge about itself? That becomes the aim and objective of Gyan or Jnana Yoga. It is a tremendous discipline. It is a very high path. Very few people can follow this particular path. Of all of the paths that we're going to be talking about, Bhakti Yoga is by far well, I won't say easy. I don't like that word easy because none of the yogas are easy. But certainly it's available to most people because we all have feelings and emotions and things of that nature. Karma Yoga is also accessible to a large number of individuals because we all are doing actions and things of that nature. But Gyan Yoga is a little rarefied because it first requires a tremendously developed intellect. You know, you have to have a very, 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 very sharp intellect. Most of the people who follow this path have spent years of very rigorous training across all the sciences. You see, all the sciences. But in spite of that, you see, if one has the intellectual strength, then certainly Jnana Yoga will help us transcend our ego. How does it work? It works fundamentally on the same search that Descartes began with. You know, René Descartes, the French philosopher, and putting together all of his premises that became the basis of what we call the Cartesian philosophy. He begins with one quest. He was trying to find an experience or object of experience that was indubitable, that could not be doubted. He wanted to know if truth should be that which we cannot doubt. If I can find something which I cannot doubt, then I will be coming closer and closer to truth. Because truth, you see, is absolute, unchangeable, and indubitable. I mean, you cannot have any skepticism about it. And so he began a process of reflection in his mind, all right, using his intelligence and his intellect as a tool. And he began to examine various phenomena. And he said, well, that chair is real, conventionally speaking. But can I doubt its existence? Is there any way that I can I be absolutely sure that this chair exists? And he was think about the man. He said, well, I could be dreaming, because in a dream, I have had many experiences of sitting in a chair. The chair felt real, only to awaken and find out the chair was not real. He knows about hallucinations. The eye plays trick, optical illusion. A lot of times you see things that really wasn't there. A rope in the night in a storm will appear as a snake when it's really a rope. And so he knew from just a close observation that it's very possible for the physical senses to deceive you. So he said, well, therefore, I don't know if anything I actually see, taste, feel, touch, etc., it can be real. Because there are circumstances where I am perceiving these things, and these things are not actually there, or they are not really made up of the reality that I associate with them. So he ruled that out. And he went on eliminating this process about people too. It's, of course, because people belong to the world of phenomena, just like these chairs, right? But Descartes soon discovered that there was one thing that he could not doubt, and that was the doubter, the one who was doing the doubting, all right? He couldn't doubt his own consciousness, you see? And his famous saying, what is it? Cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. You see? I'm aware, therefore I am. He could not doubt his own awareness. And that was the truth. You see? He could doubt his body, he could doubt everything else, but he could not doubt that he was aware. In Gyan Yoga, or in Jnana Yoga, the ideal is to, through a very powerful and sustained meditation on what is true, or more particularly, who am I? What is the nature of the I? We all make references to I, right? Universally. I want something to drink. I want some food. I want to go to a theater. I want to buy myself a particular item, etc. What is the nature of this I? Have you ever noticed? What is that I that is making all these claims, that has all these desires? And have you noticed further that normally what happens, ego begins with the rising of this feeling of I, don't you? Then you fill in the blanks. I want a car. Want a car. Now, you become identified with this desire for a car. Is that right? The desire for a car, you begin to identify with yourself. I want the car. You become immediately identified with your set of desires. Are you the desires? Or are you something beyond the desires? The whole aim and objective now of Gyan Yoga is to find out the nature of the I. This I in you. What is it? What is its real nature? And to begin to distinguish this I from all of the things. Now the problem is that we have these very complicated words, my and mine. Right? Again, all of these are connected fundamentally with a sense of I. But in what ways? For instance, we talk about my body, right? Well, What is mine cannot be me by definition. You have to stay with me on this. If I talk about my chair, it is my chair, okay. It's in relationship to me, right? But it cannot be me, right? My money, yes, my money perhaps, I can use it, but it can't be me by definition, right? Now, start coming closer to our sense of identity. My body, can this body be me? By definition. It cannot be my essence, can it? It could be in relationship to my essence, but it cannot be my essence because it's mine. Right? And you go on, what about my mind? What about my soul? Right? Buddha, and one of the great discovery of the Buddha is that even this complex that you call in my soul is not you. You still haven't arrived at your essence. That this self is used, the word self is used very rigorously. You see, it is not even you. When you say myself, that's wrong. You're still somewhere else. It's, you see, because it can't be mine. There can't be no mind involved in order to reach this ultimate thing. Jnana Yoga is that examination of all of the things that you've been calling me. All right? It's an examination, a very conscious and deliberate examination of what you've been calling me. Now, what have you been calling me? What is the nature and composition of what you have been calling me? Just look at that. What have you been calling me? Because remember, whatever you've been calling me is what you've been clinging to, right? And trying to perpetuate. But what if you've been clinging to something that is not really you? Just as, for instance, whatever you don't call mine, don't bother you. If you're not claiming this chair, it doesn't affect you if this chair burns up. Because it's not mine. Things that are not mine has no effect on you. Things that you do not claim as mine have no effect on you. And everything you claim as mine affects you as if it was you. It's very interesting, isn't it? Very interesting. So we have to begin to examine the notion of this, what you have been calling me and what you have been calling mine. Attachment is involved in the effort, sometimes pathological effort, to cling to what you call, what you feel to be yours, mine. This is mine. And we cling to it. You try to hold on to it. Attachment is this tendency to try to cling to it. To not only cling, but to own exclusively, to possess. One of the underlying emotional activity that is going on in association with attachment is this tendency to possess. It's mine. I own it exclusively. This is mine. You become very territorial. Is that right? You become territorial about it. Now you have to begin to understand this thing here. So you want to begin to examine what is the nature of your me? And forgive me because the language is awkward, you see, obviously. But this is all of our name. All of us have the same name. Me. Right? Me. Your outer name of one simply is a name referring to what? Me. Right? Shanae is a name referring to what you call me. We all call ourselves the same thing, me. So let us begin to examine the nature of this me and what we feel belongs to this me, which we call mine. Okay? All right, let's take the easiest part first. Let's take the mind. What are some of the things we call our own? Belongs to us. What are the things that we feel belong to us that are mine? sometimes, and this is really in terms of relationship, this is really where a problem becomes in, don't it? My husband, he's my husband, he's mine, therefore he belongs to me. That whole process kicks in. I own. It is a possession. Now I've reduced a human being to a possession. And when something is you feel is yours and belongs to you, right? Naturally, you feel that it should belong to nobody else, right? At all. It's yours. It's almost like what happens if you, out of error and out of faulty thinking, claim the water of the world to be yours. Are you in trouble? And you don't want, therefore, you don't want nobody drinking any water on the planet. Are you in trouble? You see. On a smaller scale, the same conflict arises. So people are very often thrown into this category of things that belong to us. Right? What else? I mean, the list can be made very exhaustive, couldn't it? Our bodies, right? Right? I mean, we could, our house, yeah, our house. Furniture that goes in the house, you see. All kinds of things. Even our intangible things can go on this list. You know, my religion, you know, my philosophy, my job, you know. Almost everything is related to you along this line. My God, yes, my God, not your God, my God, right? I own him, I own her, you see, it's mine, right? It belongs to me, right? And then the clinging sets in. And you want to examine it. Gyan says, sit and examine and tell me what is really yours. What do you really possess? Khadijah said, Shanae belongs to you, right? Huh? So that's at least one thing, right? That's right. Gyan Yog, Jhana Yog, is the discipline of really determining what belongs to me. Just like Descartes went on a very rigorous journey in search for that which he could not doubt. You must also go on a very rigorous journey to find out that which you really know. What is really yours in this world? And you have to sit with that. And you have to go into that. Because the more you go into that, the more you will become detached. Detached is simply the awakening of the realization of the non-ownership of anything. Yes?
What about ideas and insights?
Even ideals and insights. That's a little bit deeper. Because at some point you will see that even your knowledge is not yours. All of it is yours. All of it. You see? That's why the man that on the threshold of enlightenment, you realize your ignorance. It's a startling experience. For the first time you realize all this stuff, none of it is not. Now that doesn't mean that it doesn't have a utility to it. Please don't misunderstand me. Right? We all have an opportunity to use so many things, but our relationship to the things that we've been calling mine has to be altered. The gestalt has to be shifted, and we have to begin to see that these are things for us to use, but they don't belong to us. Just that shift alone allows you to transcend attachment and all of the horror that goes with it. But it requires, first off, a close examination of the nature of all the things that you have been calling mine, that you have had the emotional attachment to, and therefore the effort to cling, control, manipulate, and possess them. Right? And as you go deeper into that kind of an examination, and you begin to see the truth, that truth begins to liberate you from this whole tendency. But I want you to get used to that, because it's a very different perspective. It's a very different worldview. It's a very different mindset. What about your reputation and all these other things? All that stuff goes out the window, right? Because the question really is, what really belongs to you? Now let us do a little bit of it in class so that you get the hang of it. What really belongs to us? Now let's get serious here for a minute, because we all are walking around feeling that certain things in life that we have are ours. Right? Now what really belongs to us? What really belongs to us? And remember, this is not rhetorical. Let's look at that. Let's go for it. Let's find out. Is these mystics talking about something that is a fact, or is this stuff nonsense? We want to be clear. Yes, Kadir.
I wonder, were we different people when we experienced the earth as guests? Almost, and I think when we're a guest someplace, we treat things nicer because we don't think they're ours. So we don't feel like, well, I can do whatever I want. And then is there a change in the development of people when we change into the people of the God's no longer our concept of God is no longer a part of the earth, but something out there, and we're going someplace else anyway, so we can just screw up anything around us, and it's mine because now our philosophy says, well, God gave us animals for our use, and they're mine, and so now we don't have to be careful with them, but we can cling to them if somebody else wants them.
Right.
But we don't have to treat them particularly nice because we're no longer a guest. We're
Right.
not experiencing.
That's right. In fact, I think that you definitely are getting the spirit of what comes out of this kind of discipline. You really begin to see that you are, in fact, just like a guest in this world. And you can, for the first time, enjoy the word. One of the things that Maharaji used to always say, that a person that is attached by definition cannot enjoy life. By definition, they cannot enjoy. Because why? None of their energies will be available for enjoying anything. All their energies will be dedicated to trying to own and maintain ownership of the things they think are theirs. All their energy will be consumed in the clinging process, in the process of holding on to something, clinging to it, possessing it, owning it, and no energy whatsoever will be available for celebration. Right? If I go into a hotel somewhere that is clearly not mine, I can enjoy it, simply because I am not related to it as mine. No tension, no stress, no strain, no concerns. Right? If the hotel blows up the next day, I'm not impacted at all. You're only impacted because of your own imposed relationship on reality. And you have to understand that very clearly. It is something we do to ourselves. It is self-created misery based on ignorance, divine ignorance. And what is that ignorance? That ignorance is the belief that you actually own something. And therefore we have to look at that very, very close. It is a serious, serious homework. In fact, so serious that if you can do this, automatically it will turn your mind toward the Dharma. You see, that's the beauty of these things, you see. It automatically turns you. There's no effort. You don't feel no strain on yourself. You don't feel like you're sacrificing and giving up something of value in order to travel a spiritual path. You don't have that sense at all. All that drops out because your knowledge has become much higher. So the question still confronts us: what in this world really, truly belongs to you? What about your children? Let's start with some real stuff. Because these are the people that we're normally attached to, right? When we say people, let's shrink that now, right? Let's shrink it down to the circle of your significant others, right? Your husband, your wives, your children, your brothers, your sisters, your friends, etc. Because this is where all the complication is in, right? Who's making you miserable? That husband, that wife, them children, that friend, right? Some guy over in Russia is having no impact on you, emotionally, psychologically. It's just a few people, actually a handful. Is that right? It's really the truth, isn't it? So when you be talking about the whole world, what are you talking about? You're talking about a handful of people. that you just have to get in balance with. That's just your little world. You're not talking about 5 billion people and an infinite history of billions of other people before. You're not talking about that. Your misery is contained within a very small circle of people.
Because
And
of your ownership, you think these people are your own.
right,
So it's a
right,
narrow it down.
right. Now, when I have the feeling that I own something, what kind of attitudes are bound to follow that assumption? Yeah. Yeah. When it is clear that I own something, the first formation in my mind is possession. And by possession, what we mean a little bit more, Stephanie. When I possess something, that means I got what? Power, dominion, and control. Right? I got control. I control this thing, right? In fact, that's how I define whether something is mine. If I can't control it and manage it and manipulate it, I actually lose the experience that it is mine.
Is it in our law that possession is what brings?
It's 9/10 of the law,
9/10 of the law.
right? This is 9/10 of the relationship, right? So that which I feel is I own, I possess it, I control it, right? What is this relationship to me? What is this whole function then? The things that I own, what are they function? What is their utility? Right. Oh, yeah, you good this morning, huh? It's to give me pleasure, right? That's my relationship with stuff that I own. How can the stuff I own be deployed, utilized in order to give myself the experience of pleasure? It's real simple, isn't it? And useless, isn't it? It puts one clearly on the useless side, don't it? Clearly on the useless side of life. Everything is reduced to how they can give me some pleasure. Right? So you begin to see how this whole mechanism sets up. Right? But we still have not answered the primal question: what do you own? What is it that you feel that you own? And you have to answer this question on your personal level. You have to go home, do some homework, and really get a good idea. Write it down. Don't try to do this homework in your head. You know, you're not a Gyan Yogi yet, right? Write this stuff down, you see, and get it very clear. What are the things you think you own down here that belongs to you? That you own and possess for the sheer benefit of your pleasure and your happiness. Of course, you won't see it like that. You will say, oh, you know, I'm trying to make them happy. But we know what's really going on. You see underneath that, right?
Do we own our experiences? I know we don't own the knowledge.
Yeah. You may find that out. That's why I said I want you to really do that, because how do you experience anything? Is your experience just flowing and you are encountering the experience, or are you generating anything? You may find it's the reverse. You may find that life is simply happening to you, that you're not in control of the next event. You may find that you are simply a witness, an experiencer, sitting in a sea of infinite unfolding of events. Like sitting in a theater, watching a movie on the screen. No, it's relieving. What happens if you sit in the audience and you have forgotten that you're in a theater, and that you sit in the audience and you have got caught up in the plot? That's what happens in good literature, good drama. It draws you into the phenomenon. And now, some tragedy is happening to the protagonist on screen, and you're crying. Oh, why? Because there's been a link up between you and the protagonist in the story. You have become a part of the drama. And so now the baby dies. I remember seeing Terms of Endearment. I just cried just like it was my daughter that died. You understand? Right. There was a link, but that's what great art does. It pulls you out of your own reality into it itself and takes you through that whole emotional variety of experiences. Right? Now, there's nothing wrong with that per se. If after the movie, And the lights come on, you say, and you wipe away your tears, and you just really had a real beautiful experience. But if you still walking around outside the theater crying, talking about my daughter died, what I'm gonna do, now you're in trouble. But that's exactly what we do. We carry it too far. We go too deep into this drama. In Hinduism, they call this a lila, a drama, a play. This is a drama that has been created to be enjoyed, just like a movie. With all of the drama, the tragedy, it is something that Sophocles could never write. It is a great tragedy. There's a beautiful agony, ecstasy, duality to life. You know, it gives you the range of phenomena to trigger all the experiences that we're capable of experiencing. Here in this world, you can experience sadness, laughter. I mean, it's quite a thing. I mean, you can really appreciate this is a tremendous show that the Lord has set up. It is great stuff. It's better than any movie that you could possibly go to. But you have to be aware in order to really enjoy it. It's like a bee. Maharaj used to talk about a bee who, if the bee is wise, it sits on the edge of the honey bowl and dips in and get the honey. But what about that foolish bee that jumps into the middle of the honey? Now its wings will become, and it will perish, will it not? When you are attached, you are like that foolish bee who has jumped into the bowl. Jesus says, be in this world, but not of it. Detachment is the capacity to be in this world, but not of it. Gyan Yoga is the yoga, the discipline, that gives us the ability to maintain this detachment, that gives us this siddhi, this power, this ability to actually be in this world and not of it. That is what the lotus have come to represent throughout antiquity. Its roots are in the mud, but its leaves are above water, pristine, clean, bright. You see? So these are all kinds of symbolisms to inform us of how we should try to be in this world. But the very first step is that you have got to be very clear on what belongs to you in this world. You have got to do, you cannot move 1 inch toward this higher state of being without doing that homework. You cannot leapfrog it. And can't nobody else do it for you. You have actually, and you got to do it sincerely. Now, if you really feel that something belongs to you, then okay. Be honest. You can say, okay, well, my children really do belong to me. That's not a fiction. That's the case. All right. You see, that is a real thing for you, right? It may cause you a lot of misery, but at least you're being honest with it. Yes, Khadija.
When I was in my early 20s, the first time I read Khalil Gibran, I read the thing about the children coming through you and not from you.
Mm-hmm.
And I was having a big struggle with my mother not releasing me and allowing me. I felt to be a grown woman, and I had children, and I thought, well, I'll send her this poem, and this will enlighten her. And I got a nastily, hastily written note saying, your children may have come through you, but mine belong to me. Signed, your mother. and I feel it caught that position, caused her a great deal of pain, but she, as you said, was honest about it and refused
To let it go.
Although many people asked her
Yes.
to deviate from that, but she wouldn't,
Yes.
So,
Yes. Because I tell you why, because on those things where you feel that, no way, this must belong to me, those are the areas you need to really work on the most. That's precisely the source of your misery. It is precisely that is where you are stuck. And that is the stuff you have to work on. You see, it's almost like taking an aptitude test. And if you score well in history and languages and spelling, but your math, you got 2 out of 1,000 right, then you know you need to work on your maths. In some sense, then, it works like that. On those things that you find is really a stretch of your imagination to give up ownership of, those areas are the very ones that you need the most work in. Right? you're going to find that there are certain things that you just don't have no illusion about ownership of. You know, that nothing, it's not under your control, right? It's not mine. I don't own this here. I don't own the weather. I don't own the planet, you know? Although there are some people that think they actually own the planet, you know? This has been the European disease of mine, you see? This false notion that they are gods, you know, and have sought to replace God, literally. So it depends on the individual, but you need to look and see in what areas you are stretching your imagination to accept as an area that belongs, that couldn't possibly belong to you. No, this is really my body. Now that's usually a stretch for all of us. Because, you know, nobody else got this body. Can't nobody else use this damn thing but me. I mean, right? I mean, and that felt sense of owning this body, that Maya, is hard to penetrate. That's why I said Gyan Yoga is a real, you know, challenging discipline. You know, as you work on the peripheral, right? You will have some success, but then it becomes very hard when you get to this body. But the mystics are telling you not even the body is yours. Now this is something, that this body is not even yours. Yes, you can use it, but it doesn't belong to you. Now, how do you make sense of this? Are they lying? Are we to discount them? Or what is the reality of that statement, that all mystics, irrespective of time, place, culture, language, not by a hair have they differed on this point, that this body is not yours. One, you definitely don't get to take it with you, all right? You definitely. So let's establish what are the criteria of ownership. What must be some of the criteria that we must meet in order to be able to say legitimately that we own something? Because as we do the homework, you need to set some parameters, right? So we have to define, or set up, at least theoretically, the criteria, right? Yes, Sandra?
I want to say that which we are responsible for.
All right, let's put that up there, and let's see if that's a good criteria. That which we are responsible for. Are there, in your mind, conceive of many things that you're responsible for that you really don't own?
Well, just what you just said, the body.
The body. All right, we can look at that, but I'm looking for something tighter. You know, though we'll come back to this notion of responsibility. What are the fundamental criteria, the absolute criteria to determine ownership? Control. All right, we'll look at this. Let's just put these up here. Control. We've had it. One of the things was responsibility. Control. If you can't control a thing, do you own it? If you cannot control a thing, do you own it? Rob said you can't own it. So ownership is one of the premises that ownership is based upon, is your ability to control it. If you all accept this is one of the factors of ownership. What can you control? What are the things in your life that you can control? Excuse me. Happiness? Can you control your happiness? I'm putting the questions out here. But before, so Siddiqui, you take us too deep here, right? I just want to stay elementary for just a little while, because I want to make sure that everybody has selected for themselves a set of criteria for determining whether or not their claims of ownerships of a particular person, place, thing, object, etc. is legitimate. We got one good one here, control. Right? What else? We all are making so many claims. This is mine, this is mine. On what basis do you determine whether the thing is yours? Or are you just claiming? Huh?
Do you consist of inheritance?
Legal, right? You're looking for the legal. So that if we're looking for a legal thing, right? Do we have papers on it? Is it a contract, or, you know, it's a legal thing, right? So much of what we claim to be ours is tied into the notion of legal ownership, right?
I wasn't thinking.
You're thinking of inheritance.
Well, I'm thinking more of spiritual rights, this kind of notion that, just as a group of people said, well, we own a place that's already occupied because we own that because it was given to us by God or something.
So
Said,
divine rights of ownership, sort of like the divine rights of king. How many of us are functioning off of that same stuff? It is ours by divine providence.
Yeah, that's,
A lot of people think they own by commitment.
Ooh. Bob, you're in good form today, brother. Commitment. All right, let's look at that. Let's come back to this divine one in commitment, too. I'm writing them out of order. Let's look first at divine providence. How much of what you are calling yours, that is mine, is based on divine rights? And is divine providence and divine rights a legitimate basis?
I personally don't think it's a legitimate basis, but I think a lot of what we're calling ours is based on whatever spiritual reference you brought up in, because the whole reason I think that we call a person my husband or my wife is our spiritual context says that you must have one to have sexual interaction with another human being. And that out of that relationship must or is supposed to come children which become yours.
Yes.
And then, there's an amazing section, I think, in the Old Testament of so-and-so begat this person, they
Yes.
begat that, begat.
Yes.
And all of that begatting refers to property rights
Sure.
and who's going to own.
In fact, it defines relationship. If you look real closely, a lot of the sense of relationships and things of that nature are related to your physical body, isn't it? Right? Your physical body seems to be started like a nucleus of that whole process. Because this physical body has a physical mother, a physical father, a brother, sister. So it begins to become like a reference point, right? Other people are mine or not mine in relationship to this physical body itself. I've not gone beyond the identification of my essence beyond this physical body. And that's a whole nother story, and that's a very good story, and hopefully we'll get a chance to explore that. If not next week, probably somewhere we'll insert it in some of the workshop. Again, I'm trying to...
The body has to live somewhere.
Yes, it has to live somewhere. So the
buy a
land.
house.
That's right, and that's how all of that gets in. It's all related to this body in some shape, form, or fashion. But I'm trying to get in now to is defining or seeing if you all can define for me the basis, the only basis on which we can say that we really own something.
Okay.
All right, what we pay for, right? We use that. That's a good one. That's a good one, Sandra. A lot of times we say what we pay for. That is what we mix our labor into becomes mine. Anything that I put my labor and energy into becomes mine. What we're beginning to see is a lot of false notions, right, that we have on what is required in order to entitle us to claim ownership of a thing. If I mix my labor into something, right, then it creates in me a sense of ownership, right? If I pay for it, which is another form of my labor converted to money and then used to purchase this thing, it is mine, right? What I legally inherit is mine, etc., etc. None of which, unfortunately, satisfy a more rigorous criteria for ownership. Now, just looking at it metaphysically now, and then particularly in terms of time. Now, Shanae gave us a good illustration, and it's the ancient one. The question becomes, what did you bring into this world with you? Really? And what will you take out? The trouble that we having is in between these points, right? Birth, right? And death. Problem is in here. What did we own before your birth? Did you own anything?
Physical,
Huh?
that's getting a physical sense, what did you
Yeah, what I'm saying, can there be any ownership with the reality of death? If you exist after death, right, then whatever you're taking with you after death really is yours.
They don't even be the spirit.
Yeah, well, we're getting into certain things, spirit. So, I mean, really, right? What is it that you take with you throughout every incarnation that you've had?
Your knowledge, it's just that knowing that.
Okay, I mean, we're looking for this thing now. We're really trying to see what are the things we really own. But in order to appreciate that, we have to look beyond just the scope of this single life, don't we? Right? Because you were here before. What do you got now that you brought into this life from your older life? Did you bring that house, the car, the husband, the children? None of that was there, right? The physical thing. But you bought something, right? And when you exit this life, will you be taking something? What? Because those are the things you really own. The spirit is doing the traveling, but what is it that the spirit is owning? Yeah, well, you know you got some karma, don't you, right?
That's right.
That's
what you
right.
taking
We
with you.
we got to put some karma here in the corner and play with this karma, because that's really important. But I mean, what are we taking any things per se? Anything? Can we rule out all physical things? What I'm trying to do is to come to some kind of radical understanding about this. Can we include anything physical as being owned by us in the true sense of the word? In the sense that it tends to subsist and survive with us throughout all of our journey, throughout our eternity. We have to rule out everything physical, even this body. You think this is the body you had in your last life? This may not even be the same sex that you had in your last life. Not even the same race. You understand? Right? You can't even imagine. But based on the history of this world, you probably been white a lot of times. I know y'all don't like that, huh? You've been a man. You know what I mean? Right? We've been so many things, right? But to say of human, even plants. You know, Maulana Rumi, the great Sufi mystic, says in one of his rubaiyats that he had went through his spiritual discipline and he was able to recall his births as plants, as insects. You know, all the way up through that hierarchy of lower beings en route to becoming a human being. So many of us have been worms, snakes. We're life, essentially, right? Life takes many forms. That life that is at the heart of you could have been in many millions of forms. And each of those forms will pick up their own experiences associated with that form that goes now into this karma pot that Dorothy talks about. You know, the collectivity of your experiences. So it seems that the only thing that is really yours is your experience. Is that right? Let's not leap. Let's not leap. We don't want to leap to this here. Let's be clear-headed about this here. Think about it. Is there anything else that can be yours other than your experience? Reputation? That's way out. We got rid of that about 10 workshops ago, right? But not even your reputation is yours. Because let's say reputation for who? For you, right? The personality, the ego structure. But when that is dissolved, that's gone, right? You still remain. Something that's more essential in you remains, right?
Definitely.
Yes.
I thought that would be yours because it carried on.
It won't go. Like, what was your reputation in your last life? Is anybody relating to that? Do anybody even know? You don't even know. You see my point? It's a temporal phenomenon. It's transient. Therefore, it's not real. Something is real that if it persists through time, right? That which persists through time is true, right?
Will
Yes.
your experiences persist through time?
In the form of your karma.
But if you don't,
Right.
if
You
the
don't
recollection
recognize.
is there.
Right, you don't recollect them. It's like a person that may have $1 million, really, just has amnesia. But technically, they still have, the million belongs to them. Technically, then, Kiva, all your experiences, whether you recall them or not, they are actually there. They are available to you, right? And they are of immense value. Immense value. So really, it's just your experience that you take with you. Interesting. Interesting. And when I say look at your experience, you can control your subjective experience of reality. You may control your subjective experience of reality. You have that ability. Because our emotional responses are always based on our perception of reality and things. You have the potential to be in full control of that, and nothing else. And nothing else. Yes, Khadija?
There's a man are muttering back here.
She muttering, what she muttering about, Khadija?
But we decided we don't really know what it is.
Essence?
Right. Because do your experiences create your essence?
Yes, in a sense. Surrounds your essence, really gives expression to your essence in some sense, and that requires us to break it down a little bit more. You all are in a profound mood this morning, I see, huh?
We
Everybody
missed
want
last
to
week.
immediately go into that deep stuff, and we will do that. But let's get comfortable, make sure that we all on the same wavelength here, because we want to move together here. We don't want to miss the opportunity of anybody to contribute some insight to us, and so we want to make sure that we try to move as a group through this thing here. But I want you to start getting a sense of this whole thing. Remember, we're starting off by looking at what is mine. Because we felt that that's the real problem. Our attachment is to things that we feel are ours, that I own, that is mine. Damn it. You see? And we tend to cling to those things out of the illusion that they're mine. But if we can destroy this illusion of ownership, then we've gone a long way in knocking out the very legs on which attachment and all the misery associated with it stands. You follow my point? Because if you are not having the emotional and psychological experience of something that's yours, you are not impacted by it at all. It has no impact on you at all. At all. So therein lies the first work of managing attachment. It's in this other area. Right? And we're trying to see what is it, therefore, that is really mine. What is really mine? Based on a set of absolute criteria, not wishful thinking. And to come up with that kind of absolute criteria, we have to move beyond the confines of this single lifetime. Right? We have to expand the time, though, to get a good picture. But even if we don't expand time, even within this small lifetime, how much what you have at one time felt you own in life, you still have? Think about it. How much of the things that you have made claims of ownership of do you have now? From this life. Well, you got something, Khadija. Huh?
No,
But I
no,
mean,
you've already told me none of it is mine,
no,
so
but I mean,
everything.
you see, really, I mean, even on a tangible level, what about all the clothes that you own 20, 30 years? Are you still on? Do you still have them? I mean, some of us do, but I mean, I'm still wearing mine. But I mean, normal people. I mean, really, what do you possess now, today, that you have possessed materially from the beginning? If I exclude your body, we may exclude everything else.
What is our self-concept then? Because that's something that after is that something that we can,
Yeah, that also becomes a component of the discipline. Everything gets examined. But we start real small. You see, the ideal is to start first as the physical. Just the physical. Then move up from there to your emotional. Then moving from the emotional to the mental. The mental, psychological. Then finally moving up here to the spiritual. You see? And this is where you want to start. And you want to examine moving upward because it's easier.
the reason I asked that though is it seems like in our little world, you are sort of what you own, your own
Yeah.
places of
Yeah, in
perspective.
fact, that's exactly what it is, Khadija. You've had the insight. But most of us, our concept of ourselves is based on what we own. I am what I own. Therefore, as you so go what I own, so go me. Now that becomes very difficult. Now, if you hit my car, ooh, it's like you hit me. I experience it the same way, right? If my car get tore up, I've experienced of being diminished somehow. Part of me is gone. My car is tore up. You see, it's a car. But as long as I have identified my essence, who I am with what I possess, to that same extent I suffer whatever happens to the things that I possess. So Khadija, already you having the right insight. For most of us, you are what you possess, or at least what you think you possess. Meditate on that. I want you to consider that. Now, the corollary to that is if you don't possess anything, then you start feeling I'm nobody, I'm nothing. It's a corollary to it. I don't have no money, I don't have this, I don't have that, therefore I'm nothing, I'm nobody. Strange, isn't it? I am that which I possess is the formula that underlies the formation of most of our sense of self-identity. It sounds rather tragic when we look at it like that, doesn't it? It is rather tragic. But Khadija, you're absolutely right. This is it. So these are the things we want to consider. These are just a few of the things to consider as we begin to use this method called Jnana Yoga, to really conduct the kind of close scrutinizing and the examination of our epistemology, of our system of knowing, what we think it is that we know, right? When we re-examine that whole epistemology that we have acquired up to this point, and through a rigorous process of beyond, we strain out all of these mistaken notions. And that's what they are. They're mistaken notions that are grounded in the failure to examine life. Socrates says a life that has not been examined from this perspective is a life not even worth living. Because you're not examining nothing. Life begins with this kind of close examination. Really, how can you call it life? You've not even examined it. Is it any wonder that everything you do is coming out wrong, that you don't have no sense of fulfillment? You've not set, you've not examined, you've not looked. You're moving with your eyes closed. You're bound to fall into holes and bump into walls. This is bound to happen. You're bound to wander around in darkness, stumbling, falling. Bound to. Why? Your eyes are closed. You've not even examined your own life. How are you going to live a life you have not examined? You haven't even examined what is the nature of who I am. How can you move? That's scary. It's almost like a person that just in a rush to get somewhere just start running. They don't have a map, no idea. And you ask them, where are you going? I don't know. I'm just going. That's not an answer. I'm just moving. But where are you going? I don't know. You just living. For what? I don't know. I'm just living. What is that? I'm just out here. What's your purpose? I don't know. I'm just out here. And year by day and year and month and minutes are going by. And you don't even know what purpose you are. I mean, it is scary. But this is how we move. You see? We all do that. You see? This is the state of ignorance that we start out in. That's just the reality. And thank God for these great mystics and saints and seers and philosophers and scientists and, who somehow miraculously have found their way, leaving for us clues, hints, insights in the form of their scriptures and their poetry and their arts, you know, to give us some kind of indicator, you know, some kind of a roadmap. And all of, without any exception, have stated that there has to be this kind of intelligence. And that is the purpose of it. And that is the thing that helps us now moving automatically into a detached state. A detached state. Because your nature is such that you're not worried about anything that you don't necessarily relate to in the sense of ownership. You're not even worried about it. Don't bother you at all. Doesn't disturb your peace of mind at all. Because you don't have any sense of ownership. Yes, Khadija?
I think that when we talk about thanking God, I think we have to be thankful too that we're living in times where we keep having these, what we usually perceive, I know I have as stumbling blocks and unfortunate events. And each time, because, you know, if you lose a job now, we're not in what we used to think of as a stable society where we could just stay at the factory all our working lives.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting kicked out.
Right.
And then we might lose our credit, we might lose all these things. And then, but then that forces us to think, well, what is it really worth in the scheme of things anyway?
Yes.
You know, and so it turns out that it isn't a terrible thing, and it's almost forcing us, you know, it's like the government started, which was inconceivable to people.
Yes.
You know,
Sure.
but then you have to really rethink, well, what do you have that you're like hanging on to? You know?
Yes, it's a great blessing. You see, it's a great blessing because unless these kind of events take place in our life, there's no way we will come out of our Maya. No way we'll come out of our illusion, you know, at all. You see, sometimes it's just the sheer shock of it, the impact of it, that breaks us out of this deep slumber, this hypnotic trance that we're in, you see. One of the things, the most shocking thing is the reality of your immortality. When that event occurs, it usually marks a turning point in your life. When you really get it, when you really understand that the world is going to go on, you're going to end. When you really get that. Because right now you think that when you die, the world stops. The world's going to go on. It's going to roll right along without you. It's just going to be fine. In fact, it may get better. You see? But you're going to end. That little ego and that little mythology that you created and all of your beliefs and your knowledge and your opinions and your attitudes and all of that ego material and that personality and your reputation, all that little ball of wax is en route to extinction. Never to be repeated in that package again. It is a freak occurrence in the big scheme of things. You've had 1 billion personalities. You think this is the first personality you have? You've had billions of them. And you have more. But this one is going to end. And all the things that you think you own, that you attach to, that you just can't live without, it's going to be snatched from you. For sure. Either you will die, and that will break your grip on them, or they will die, and that'll break your grip on them. Either way, it's going to end. And you're not emotionally, psychologically, intellectually, or spiritually prepared for that inevitability. And it's going to tear you up. Because this is the Dhamma. As Dhammo Sanatano, that's the law, that's how it is. You see? And that's the thing. So you're right, Khadija. These crises in life, probably they check us up because somewhere on a subliminal level, they remind us of this cessation of things. That job, when it stopped, it's like a death in a small sense. Ooh, the paycheck is stopped. Ooh, I thought it would never stop. You're actually walking around predicating your whole life on the illusion that I'll retire and live happily ever after. Because millions have retired and lived happily ever after, and you just thought that this was a law. You didn't know that this was just a temporary phenomenon that an economy was passing through, and that economies are part of phenomena and therefore obey the same laws of the Dhamma. They too change from prosperity, you understand, to collapse. This happens. Rome is in ruins. You understand? You see? Great empires are laying in dust. Kemet, one of the greatest empires on this planet, is in dust, and the people are savages. Asdharmo Sanatana. That's how it is. But we didn't know that, did we, Khadija? And then when that happened, now it shakes up something in you, right? Ooh, your little reality is disturbed, right? Ooh, and it's snatched from you, and the pain is just, ugh. What I'm going to do? Some people can't handle it. They blow their brains out when they lose them jobs. That sense of security. Or you lose a loved one, right? Divorce, separation, or death of a loved one. Same thing. Because you've been thinking inconsistently with reality. You've been thinking you own something. And you own none of these things. So you're absolutely right. And therefore, it becomes mandatory that we look. And because when you can't do that and that pain becomes too much, now you're going to have to escape into some drugs, you're going to have to escape into some alcoholism, you're going to have to escape into some other kind of distracting or addictive type of thing to anesthetize the agony of that realization. Right? Or you become very bitter, you become very cynical. You know? Now you turn into a hater of mankind. You see? Something. You know?
What do we go too far? What happens, like, if, okay, you lose your thing, and so maybe you come to the conclusion all you have is yourself, and then, so then you get into this big preservation of yourself. And,
Yeah.
you know,
Same areas.
yeah.
You need to lose some more. But you see, you come to a point where you realize that finally, when the nightmare is over, when the day of the dark night of the soul is in, when you really come out of that, as you said earlier, Khadija, you bring a whole different attitude toward life now. In fact, for the first time you celebrate. Yes, things will come. People will be in your life, you'll have relationships. How can you avoid that? But it will never be with that clinging anymore. And that is what gives life its sweetness. You're not clinging no more. You see? And for the first time, you are able to celebrate. For the very first time. Because now you can't celebrate. You can't enjoy your wife because you're too busy trying to control her. You can't enjoy your kids, you're too busy trying to control them. You can't enjoy your husband because you're too busy trying to see if he's running around with some other woman and interfering with your exclusive ownership. You can't enjoy that. You know, anxiety. Ooh, some other woman gonna get on. I mean, how you gonna enjoy it through the midst of that anxiety? Right? Right? It's not possible. That detached state of mind that this kind of hard mental effort ideas will enable you for the first time in your life to really enjoy the things that you've been thinking you possess. I mean, it's a tremendous liberation. So Gyan Yoga, when done, you see, systematically, is a very effective way of transcending the ego, and therefore transcending the problems that the ego creates for us in our personal relationships in the form of attachment. So let us take our little break, and then when we come back, we'll look at this other method, and then get ready for next week. So we'll come back at 10 after 2.